I wanted to show you this tool that we have acquired called TrueLearn for Question Bank and and your learning. Um, now, I want to say a few things about it, but I want to make it clear that this is a formative assessment tool, meaning that the main purpose of this tool is for you guys to know your strengths and weaknesses and get an idea and feedback on what you need to learn better, and also try to memorize some of the concept, um, as testing is one of the best way of memorizing information. So my purpose of reviewing this information with you is just to show you how useful and helpful this tool is, and make sure that you're aware of all these resources that are available to you as a resident. So this is my dashboard for the TrueLearn, and basically I am logged in into one of the three question banks that we have. So if I click up here, you can see that we have the right exam question bank, and that's where all 18 residents are registered. But we also have this question bank that is for board examination. So it's called Neurology Cert Exam Question Bank, and it's for the 4 graduating residents and 2 of the fellows from last year, that were planning to take the board exam. So they were registered to this question bank, and we got a good deal on it and pretty cheap. And then additionally, the 5 first-year residents were also given access to the internal medicine question bank for the preliminary year that they have access to. So one thing I want to note from the get-go is that when you log in, you probably log into the default question bank, which is the neurology right exam, but you can probably switch. My screen may look different than your screen, but I'm sure if you look around, there will be a way to find out how to change the question bank to the board exam or to the internal medicine based on which group you belong to. Now, these 2 other banks are not available to everyone right now, but every year the new graduating resident will get access to the board exam question bank. So that's one point that I wanted to make. So make sure that if you have access, that continue to use this as your resource. Coming back on this dashboard, this is basically a summary of the performance on the questions that have been taken by the residents. Now, I know not all of you have had a chance to utilize this, but you can see now with some data from our own residency program that how useful this is. You can see the performance scores at different time measures over the time, and you can see in January the question bank scores really went up, and they went up because people started taking it. So the fall down on this gray line, which is us, is not because of poor scores by the resident, it's because residents had no exams taken during those time period and no data was available, so it was by default a score of 0 on those time periods based on the assessment on this graph. Now, more interesting is this data that you can see with the thick blue line in the middle and then a pink line and a light blue line on the top. And you can see on top here that these are the national averages, the national 20th percentile, the 80th percentile, a moving average, and a daily average. Now, these scores are collected, pooled together from all the universities that are participating in this TrueLearn program. I don't have the access to the list of these programs on who are participating, but I know there are quite a few. In neurology, this is pretty new, so there may not be as many, but in medicine, there are probably more than 100 programs that are participating in this. But I'm not sure. This data is more for neurology, and I don't have the exact number right now. But you could see that where we're falling. So if you look at the graphs towards the end, when some of the residents were actively taking the exam, and you can see that compared to a moving daily average, the residents were performing somewhat better overall over time, and that is a good trend to see for us, meaning me and Dr. Kedar, to know the residents are doing okay. But what we want to use this bank for, number one, asynchronous learning, for you to be able to learn at your own pace and get a feedback, but also to see where can we help you. This data is never used for grading you or for performing any kind of judgments, but is basically to see who can be helped and where they can be helped. Now I'm going to move through some of the screens and you may see some of the residents' name, their numbers and scores, but we can ignore it because we don't have enough data. And I apologize to those residents for going through this quickly, but I'm doing it with a clear understanding that this is just a formative assessment. It is only for learning and is no judgment on anyone's abilities, capacities, performance as a resident. This is not a residency assessment tool of any shape or form. So these are the graphs I have access to. I have scores and percentiles on group averages, on where people are scoring and doing. There is overall performance in terms of different question banks. So this is the right blueprint, and I can see how many questions have been taken in a particular component, how many were correct and incorrect, and where the group averages are compared to the national averages. And this helpful color-coded graph tells me where we are doing better and we're doing worse. And I think it's probably lined up so that our worst performers are on the top and our best performers are on the bottom. So in clinical adult, for example, we're scoring much better than the national average, but in contemporary issues, we are about the same amount below than the national average, although the number of questions taken are small. I can look at question performances once enough questions have been taken. So a single question has to be taken 10 times, either by 10 different residents or same resident a few times. Then I can see what the scores are like in compared to the national averages, and I don't have that data available for any question. I can go into anatomy and different components to see how we're doing. And again, this is the institutional scores average, so it's all 18 of you averaged as compared to the national average. So we can see if a particular question is a problematic issue, or which may mean that we have not covered that content, that I need to adopt the curriculum and get that covered, or it may be that it was not taught well and you didn't get it right, so we need to go back and look at what was taught and if can it be taught again differently by someone else, or maybe not as a lecture but maybe as an assignment, or maybe you can send you a resource to read an article or something like that. So you can see how useful this information can be for someone like me who's trying to make your education better and is trying to give you all the resources. Someone like Dr. Kedar who wants to figure out who to invite to speak, what resources to buy for you. This will be extremely useful information once you have done enough of these questions. We can look at improvements. You can see our group improvement rate of 26% per 1,000 questions, which is lower than the national improvement rate of 31%. But again, our group scores are not reliable, as many of you have not had a chance to take these questions yet. And I'm sure once you start taking these questions, we will either match or even beat the national improvement rate. And so I do have a detailed analysis of the usage by different times, and you can see it has really picked up before the right exam, which is expected. Now I do have access to more details such as individual resident scores that I don't want to stay on that screen too long for you to be able to tell. I can look at the program performances by category. Our average group score currently, based on the few people who have taken it, is 60.7%, which is better than the national average of 60% by about 0.7%. And the top residents for overall anatomy is Brian. Behavioral psychiatry, Matthew really nailed it, 100%. I hope it was not cheating. Navi is doing great in clinical adult and clinical pediatrics. Praveen in contemporary issues. Brian again in neuroimaging, and Navi again in pathology. But this I'm sure will change as more and more of you start taking this. But these are very, very useful resources for us to be able to see how you guys are doing, what can we do to make it better for you, and so on and so forth. So the main idea of reviewing all this information was to show you that this is a useful resource. It is a formative resource. It is an asynchronous learning. You can do it at your own pace, at your own time. You can get a phone reminder of the questions you missed. It will consolidate your learning. It will make sure that you're learning the right point. I do admit the disclaimer that I have not reviewed these questions, so I cannot guarantee if the answers were right or if they were teaching the right point. But my assumption is that they are They have had some quality control. They are based on right exam questions. But I'll be open to feedback from all of you who have taken the questions if that's not true. But I hope that gives you an information, a window into what you're doing great, what can be made better, so that you become the super residents that you guys are, and do excellent in your clinical practice in future and also in board examination. Please feel free to email me, stop me in the hallway, come and meet me, or send me a text. You have my email address, dbhatti@unmc.edu, and my cell phone is 402-707-3149. I am looking forward to working with you guys over the next few years on making this better.